welcome to Light Haven, the podcast for all things spiritual, mystical, and energetic. I'm Ruth, mystery student towards the awakening of consciousness.
And my name is Bianca, light worker and astrology enthusiast.
The title of this episode is People Pleasing, Being Your Unapologetic Self.
Very nice.
And yeah, this topic came about because I think it's such a common theme, whether it's something that we have worked through previously or continue to work through as the layers of the onion unfold. But we recently were discussing it and said this would be a great thing to dive into deeper because it's so common to so many people and a lot of us don't realize that we're doing it.
Yeah, I thought just crossed my mind and I wanted to say, yeah, we've all been there, but I actually don't think that's true. There are a lot of people out there who are not people pleasers. But despite that, I still think it is a very common problem because a lot of us do struggle with it, including myself. So I'm really excited to talk about this because it's something that that resonates with me on a personal level. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in. So
Such good comments, Bianca. When you said
mm,
you wanted to say we've all been there, but you realized we haven't, the first thought that came to my mind was people can be along some kind of a spectrum. And
mhm,
you have people pleasers on one hand. In the middle, you hopefully have the neutral and healed people from both sides. Now, if you go all the way down the other end of the spectrum, you have narcissists. So
I was thinking that, yeah.
the opposite of a people pleaser, they are so out of line. They can't think twice about anyone else's needs. They just run in like a bull in a china shop and it's their way or the highway. So two
Exactly.
sides and both unhealthy.
Yeah. So we want to get to that middle ground, that middle of the spectrum, that balanced, a little bit of individuality as well as keeping in mind the feelings and the thoughts and feelings of others as well. So
That's
yeah.
right. And can I just say, I'm so excited because this is the first time we're recording online. And normally,
Yes.
yay, Bianca, you and I meet in my dining room and set up all our equipment around the dining room table. And I know it's a bit of a hike, the 15 minutes that you drive to my house, but when you have kids and other
Yeah.
commitments, it's
Yeah.
not easy getting
Yeah.
that to work. So, because we're going to also be hosting and interviewing people from other parts of the world, we've now moved into the space where we're starting more online recordings. And this is the first time that you and I are recording online. So it's a new dynamic, but I think
Yeah.
it will be just as awesome as always.
It's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest, because yeah, I was getting everything set up and the thing is that because we do the recordings at your house, normally everything we just got into this routine of how everything's going to go technology wise and the setup and we had our, like I said, our routine. But now that I'm here recording from my house, I've had to figure out how to get my setup done in my own space, using slightly different technology and there's a lot of troubleshooting along the way. I mean, we connected about an hour ago and we're only just getting to the part where we are ready to record. So fingers crossed that this goes well. I touch wood, but also if you can hear a difference in sound quality, it's just because that we're now online and using it, connecting in a different way. I guess you could say that.
Yes, and this is likely to become the new normal for us because it will help us to be more efficient, hopefully get online more often and create more valuable content that can help people. So I think, yeah, people will get used to it. But
Yeah.
the odd occasion when we want to meet in person and do a
Hmm.
full face-to-face recording will
Hmm.
always be welcome and enjoyed.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm also excited to hear how this turns out because yeah, who knows? I'm just anticipating
Yeah, this is the
how this
first
is going to
time.
go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. So
awesome.
yeah. Mhm.
Well, let us dive in. One of the first questions that will be on a lot of people's minds is what is people pleasing and why should I care about it? How is it a thing? Because when we don't reflect on how we're doing, what do our habits look like? And what is driving those behaviors? What's at the core that's causing us to behave in a certain way? Then we can kind of just truck along and get used to being in a routine, which is good for us to feel safe and comfortable, but not for us to grow.
Yeah, I was also thinking as well that people don't realize that they're even doing this sometimes. It can be a very subconscious thing that they're acting out, and if they're not aware of it, then it can become a problem because they find themselves getting stuck in unhappy situations or frustrating situations, and they don't realize how or what's brought them to this point. So I think the question being, why do you think people pleasing is a problem? I think a lot of it can be a problem in the sense that you don't realize it's a problem. That's a
That's
problem in
right.
itself.
I think, some people, when they hear people pleasing, they'll think of very extreme examples, like someone being in a physically abusive relationship, and they'll say, well, that's the end result of terrible people pleasing. They couldn't say no even when someone was hurting them physically. But we forget that it's not always physical and it's not always glaringly obvious in your face. So maybe we should also kind of define it, at least give some examples of what it looks like, just generically, so that we can highlight how it's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Um, I think that some examples, just very generically, would be at the top of my mind is saying yes to things that you know you don't want to do. Just straight up, like saying yes to committing yourself to something that you don't want to do, but you know it's something your parents are asking you to do. Say if you are living at home and you share, you don't even have to be living at home. Actually, it could just be something that your parents ask you to do, or someone that asks you to do something, and then you feel obligated, so you say yes. But really, your heart's saying, no, I don't want to do this. I'm tired, or I have other things now. I need to switch those around and rearrange my commitments to accommodate to this new thing that I've now committed myself to. That generically to me is like is just that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of arguments around this because the Western culture is very independent. So you have other cultures that are more group focused and also focused on the family unit. And there are deep seated aspects of the culture that have to do with respect for parents and grandparents that can add a layer of complexity to people pleasing in general. Because someone can say, oh, but you don't understand. In my culture, I have to do what my parents say, otherwise I'm ungrateful. And that's really hard. There's no easy answer. The pressure that someone must be under and feel, having been conditioned by a particular geographical location and the culture of that location, could be more than you and I could imagine having different upbringings.
Oh, absolutely. And I know in the multiculture, and like many other cultures, I'm sure, is that there's this saying, respect your elders. So, what does respecting your elders look like? It looks like obeying them and listening to what they say and doing as you're told, even despite how you may feel about what you're being told to do. So it's like, how do we accommodate, this aspect of respecting, the cultural customs that we've been raised on, as well as honoring our individuality as well. It's a hard balance to find, and especially if you don't have an older generation that are accepting of that individuality, that voice of yours, it can be a real difficult one for people.
Yeah. And I remember this story. It's not 100% to do with boundaries, but it's a classic story about the dangers of certain rules around respect. And I may not remember this story correctly. So if the original story went differently, I apologize. But there was this true story, I believe, of pilots that crashed a plane. And when the black box was retrieved to find out why this happened, it was discovered that one of the pilots had come across some critical error that needed to be corrected. But because of his respect for the head pilot, didn't feel in a position to be able to speak up because somehow it would be disrespectful. And the recording included, recording of him discussing it with someone and them feeling so at a loss because respectfully in the environment they were in, they didn't feel that they could speak up, and then they all died. So yes, we can have all kinds of rules that can come from a number of places, but the consequence, hopefully, it won't be as drastic in other situations, but it's an example of what is going to be the end outcome for someone in terms of their health, their mental health, their physical health, their long term ability to contribute to society. All of these things, they need to be considered, even if this goes against rules, social rules.
Totally. And I couldn't help but think about how I contribute to that dynamic in my own family situation and being a parent. How am I parenting my children in a way that is teaching them all the necessary things for them to grow up to be respectful citizens, um,
Mm-hmm.
and contributing to humanity in a great way. But also, it's hard as a parent because you want the best for your children. And how far do you discipline them? I thought about this today, actually, when I was coming down hard on my daughter for something that happened. And it's probably not worth saying the details about what it was that I was coming down hard on her for. But I remember thinking afterwards, taking a step back and thinking, oh my gosh, Bianca, don't break this poor child's spirit. Let her speak and let her have a voice in this discussion or this argument, whatever you want to call it, and give her that opportunity to speak up for herself rather than being the hard disciplinary, domineering, this is what should have happened, just not hearing her out. Because if I did that, and if I continue to do that and act that way, she's not going to feel safe to speak up, and her voice is going to feel, she's going to feel diminished, like she's not going to feel like she has a voice, and she's not going to feel safe to speak up around me, and therefore she's just going to say yes and be that people pleasing person, because she would rather, that's the easy way out, is just to say yes, sorry mum, I'll do that next time, despite, what she's feeling inside. And then it's teaching her to listen to others and not listening to herself. So that's such a real experience that I think
Wow.
we go through as parents and even as individuals every day, those that fight with this people pleasing thing. Yeah.
So interesting the story you shared, Bianca,
Yeah.
because on the one hand, there's the struggle, your own struggle, right? As a parent and as an adult moving through life and gaining wisdom and maturity as you have your own experiences and going, I have pretty much conquered my people pleasing ways. And now I'm standing on this new higher ground. And then suddenly training your child to become the next people pleaser.
Exactly. And we forget that, sometimes we forget where we came from. I came from a household. I love my parents to pieces. I respect them. I just, I adore them. They're amazing people. But we were a big family, and what do you do in big families? You got to pull the line. You don't step out of line. You stick with the plan, because there's too many of you guys to be worrying about each other. So you all have to, you kind of have to minimize yourself and go along with things, and you're not taught to think for yourself. You're not taught to speak your mind. You're taught to be invisible, in a sense, to make it easier and more manageable to be able to contribute to a harmonious household. So I remember feeling like I didn't have a place to speak up when I was growing up. And now here I am as a parent, almost thinking, like, forgetting where I came from and forgetting the struggles that I had as a child, feeling invisible. And now I'm being that strict disciplinary parent that I tried not to be. Like, I told myself I never want to be like my parents when I grow up. And here I am. It's just such a natural, instinctual thing to parent the way that you were parented when you were growing up.
And I think that's a commonly described issue, not just with people pleasing, but with everything, that people say they never want to become their parents. And as they are becoming them, they can't see it. So it's so
Exactly.
interesting. And we
Yeah.
can't beat ourselves up about these reflections. It's more about being more and more aware and noticing it when it happens and then learning. And I love that you had that honest heart to heart with Penny and shared with her how you were feeling and where you were coming from and what your intentions were, because then she can see that you're trying, that you're human, and what is the aspiration, because no one's going to be perfect, but at least they
Exactly.
know what we're striving towards.
Exactly. And yeah, I could see how it had affected her, just me coming down hard on her. And just when you were mentioning about, you know, um, just connecting with her and talking to her about it. Um, when I reached out to her, because I could see how affected she was, I went to her in the room and I sat down with her and tried to have this I guess this moment with her to connect and really see what was going on inside of her, because I did all the disciplinary type of thing, like, and she didn't really, she couldn't say anything because I was all wound up, and anything, any little thing that she could have said, I would have come back at her and like equal, like doubly as hard, so she didn't say anything. So later on, when I checked myself, I was like, oh my gosh, that was really bad. Like, Bianca, you need to go talk to your daughter. So I went to her and we we had this discussion, and she opened up, and actually it turns out that she was feeling she had things going on that I didn't even realize were going on inside of her, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to just to talk with her about it and really find out what was going on underneath. And that actually led to a really touching moment that we had between the two of us, and I was really grateful that although it did start out bad, I'm glad that I wasn't too proud to go to her and say, "Hey, look, the way I came down on you wasn't right. I'm really sorry." And I know this is a little bit off topic, but just as parenting, as parents, we we shouldn't be too proud to admit when we feel like we have made a mistake, or where we've gone wrong, especially to our children, because we're human, and it's important for them to see that humans, even adults, mess up in and I think it's important for them to see that. And when they can see that we have that as adults we're not perfect and that we mess up, it might make them feel like it's okay for them to be themselves, not perfect, and to know that adults don't have it all together. Adults don't have the answers to everything, and they're not perfect human beings. So they can grow up having confidence and being like this episode title is, being your unapologetic self, because you don't have all the answers. You're not going to be perfect, and you can be your imperfect self, like perfectly imperfect.
That's beautiful, Bianca. There's so much in what you said just there. I'm hearing the themes of honesty, being real and raw instead of fake and uptight. And these are all the building blocks of good relationships. Not only are you building stronger ties with your daughter, but you are demonstrating to her how to have healthy relationships. It's not to say that any one of us is perfect, but when we make a mistake, if we can learn and grow together and admit the difference between what happened and where we wanted to sit, then the other person can see that we're trying and can create space for us to have those trip ups and those learnings. And they know that we're not just teeming with malice and out to get them, but that we're a frail human being trying our best, and they can appreciate that. And the other thing that I thought of was vulnerability. And it is what you said, that if we can be vulnerable before those around us, we help to remove this idea that perfectionism is the way to be. I can't tell you how many people I have seen in in the teams that I work with, especially if I have someone new and green coming into the team that hasn't had previous work experience, but they've interviewed great on paper. When they join the team, maybe they worked really hard to prepare for the interview and they have some good qualifications and they're grateful for the job, but now they know that they've sold themselves really well, and maybe they even, some of them, oversell themselves. So they're going in with a fake it till you make it idea, which is fine, but then they hold themselves to this crazy standard that I don't even have for them, and expect things of themselves that are not even realistic. And what it does is, when they try to do something really basic, they're so uptight that they can't even do that. So being vulnerable actually unlocks our magic so we can be better, not worse. So it's funny how when you're perfectionist, it backfires.
Absolutely, absolutely. To be your unapologetic self is like is to accept our flaws and to accept that we are not perfect, no matter how much we want others to think that we have it all together, right? Like you go to an interview, like you mentioned, and people put their best foot forward, and then it's this high standard that they've set. They've set the bar really high, where now they feel like they have to continuously strive to be at this high performing level, which people are just not going to be able to do or maintain. It's not sustainable. But in order to accept yourself as this imperfect being, we have to be there has to be this safe space for you to be your vulnerable self, your raw self, in your true authentic self. So having a safe space, like from a parent's perspective, having a safe space where my children can feel like they can speak up and speak their mind is probably one of the first steps to becoming your authentic or unapologetic self, to doing away with people pleasing. Because once you have the solid foundation of feeling safe to speak your truth, it's like riding a bicycle. Hopefully, the earlier you start, the younger you start, then you can it can come more naturally to you throughout the years. So if you are taught to be this way, if you've learnt these skills as a young child or as a teenager, and your parents have helped you to develop these skills, because it is a development, like it is a skill that we have to learn as human beings. It needs to be demonstrated to us in order to start utilizing it in our lives. And I think through parenting skills, or even if you didn't have the best parents growing up, or if you didn't have that person that could teach you these things, there are other ways you can learn. It's never too late. But I'm just thinking to myself, where does it begin? Where can we start this process of being our unapologetic self? It's through that feeling safe to speak up and feeling safe to be ourselves, and that being in that vulnerable state, there needs that security and that safety net first and foremost. You're not going to open up and be vulnerable if you don't feel safe to do so, or if you've never been taught to feel safe, or you don't even know what that feels like. So yeah, I feel like I'm going on a rant, but I'm just like
No, this is important, and I'm sure someone will find it helpful. You know,
yeah,
some people, it was like we said in the last episode,
yeah,
sometimes you have to hear something a few times for it to
mm,
sink in.
yeah,
So it's all important and valuable. And people can suffer from being people pleasers in different parts of their lives in different ways. And I
mhm,
was surprised when I started looking into the problem of people pleasing. There were things that I was doing that I didn't realize was a problem. But once there was a language to describe this is what people pleasing can look like, then it was an aha moment for me. And I could kind of put skin on bones around situations where I was falling prey to those types of scenarios and quickly realize, oh, wow, that's where my energy is going. And that's why I'm feeling really tired in those instances. And now I know when to call it. So, one example is sometimes people will do something called emotional unloading. And it's something that women do all the time. And it's a natural way that we connect and bond. There's nothing wrong with it. But it can also get out of hand, and it can become a one-way street. And that's where you have a problem. And I'll never forget the time I I came across someone who I would say was somewhat of a narcissist. So I'm going to be careful in how I describe the people involved. But there was an acquaintance, and this acquaintance was leaving the city. So they had a farewell dinner party. And it's safe to discuss this because one of the people in this party is no longer in the picture. But at this farewell dinner party, one of the other people at the party said, Now, I need to share with everyone this big story about very dramatic things that were happening in their life. And a few hours later, the whole group was still sitting there going on and on and on about this one person that the party wasn't for. And there was no end. And this was the first time that I met this person, and we didn't really stay in touch afterwards. But I was quite shocked. At the same time, no one broke up the tirade that was going on and on. So we all didn't express our boundaries when we were having this on, because it wasn't a small emotional unloading. It was going on for hours. And no one did anything or said anything to express that it was kind of enough by then. The whole group just sat there for hours. And I remember after this party thinking, oh, I feel so tired. And I didn't even know any of the people there. And
Wow.
I wasn't happy to have gone to that party at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I feel like that is such a common thing where you don't want to be that person that puts up the boundary first. Especially if you're in a group dynamic. You're gonna hope that someone is gonna be more confident or more steadfast in you and divert the conversation to something else, because I think there's a lot of things that's playing on people's minds when it comes to when is it enough, when do I put the line in the sand and say here's a boundary, because you don't want to dismiss the person, you don't want to dismiss the things that they're saying because it is very personal. They might be unloading very, very personal things that are difficult for them. So you don't want to just, interrupt them and say, "Hey, like this is getting too much for me." And I don't know. It's such a tough situation to be in. So I feel for you, and I've been there too. It's hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
And I think in our Kiwi culture, we are generally quite meek. Now, I've spent a bit of time overseas as well. And when I first came home to New Zealand, I went through a transition period where I had to learn. No, wouldn't say had to. I learned to fit in. There was no one forcing me to do it. But I kind of learned the Kiwi way. And it did
Yeah,
make life easier for me. But I think, you can learn the lessons, you can learn how to acclimatize and get on with people. But at the same time, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't throw your soul out the window when you're doing it, right?
yeah,
So there's a
yeah,
balance.
totally. And I wanna I also feel like there's something, I might be backtracking a little bit here, but I do think it's really important to address this whole concept of how do people become people pleasers? You know what I mean? We're talking about the act itself and what it looks like, but how did we get to this point as people? Yeah, we talked about generational, respecting your elders, but I also think that some people are big people pleasers, and it may not necessarily have been because they were taught to have to respect their elders. It could have been from some other internal dynamic going on, as a child. I want to bring up one thing that I think is a root cause of people pleasing is this: as a child, you've you you've tried to, and this is what I've done, I'm guilty of this. I've tried to create a safe environment for myself by thinking that if I can please others, then I'm controlling their reaction towards me, and that reaction is going to be a pleasant one instead of an angry, harsh one. So it's actually a people pleasing is not actually a, oh, I'm so kind, I'm so giving, I'm so polite. It's actually like a self protecting way of being. it's so that you as a person or as a child can avoid the uncomfortable, maybe harsh criticism that might follow by speaking up and saying what you truly really think.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. All of these things are connected to childhood 100%. Whether it was the adults or authoritarians in your life as a child behaving in a harsh manner or not, it could be how the child was perceiving it or how they decided they wanted to play it to make it better for themselves that led to that habit. And what I would add to that is that the two other things is that it's to do with self-esteem and the ability to use the voice because
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, those are the specific situations that could have led to it. So wanting to control the people around you by behaving in a certain way and thinking, if I am nice, if I am good, if I am pleasing and I do everything they say, I will stay out of trouble. And it could be whether the adults were meting out corporal discipline or whether they were just giving you a stern look or
Mhm.
a scolding,
Mhm.
whatever it was that you found unpleasant, wanting to
Yeah.
shy away from it and control that to feel happy and safe.
Mhm.
But if if you were not raised to feel to have your sense of person boosted and uplifted and secure.
Or validated.
Yes, that's right. If your voice was dismissed, all of these
Mhm.
things, then you can have self esteem challenges.
Yeah.
And with those challenges, every time it's a self esteem challenge, you diminish yourself in some way, whether you hold back what you want to say, you hold back what you're going to do, or you do what someone else wants you to do, or what you think they want you to do, all to hopefully make yourself feel better in some way because you don't feel good as you are. And you're scared to have the full expression of who you are because they may not like it. So, what I'm getting at is the self esteem piece of this puzzle is the confidence that I am enough. And it is, I am enough as I am with my faults and my failings, with my idiosyncrasies, with the things that I do that you find annoying. But if I can be confident enough and stand strong enough in my voice and my person, I will be okay with it. And I will gladly bear the consequences of being who I am because the people that are right for me and that resonate with me will be the ones in my life because they deserve to be and because we're right for each other, not because I was hiding my light and my truth and my voice and my needs or suppressing my needs. Now, when I say all this, I'm actually imagining some scenarios. So I want to counterbalance this because I'm not telling people to walk out on their family or uh, block their mother or anything like that. Maybe you're feeling really hot-headed right now and worked up, but
Yeah.
there's a kind of boundary that's very rigid, and I'm not advising people to do that. There are actually techniques and ways you can move into finding your full expression in a grounded manner and training the people around you to treat you how you need them to treat you. And I don't think you will alienate all the good people in your life or that you will end up divorced or anything like that, but it's a process.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Ruth. That was so perfect. Like you touched on a lot of things that really resonated with me, and I just think I love that there's you said a mantra, I am enough. Like that is literally that is a mantra, and it's a powerful one. And it actually I couldn't help but think about again, the conversation that I had with my daughter today, we got past our differences, and she opened up to me and said that she feels like a third wheel at school, and the dynamic between her teacher and her teachers and her friend. And I think she's feeling a little bit like she's in her friend's shadow, and it's making her feel small. It's making her feel insignificant. And I felt like I just wanted to give her a big hug and just tell her how amazing she is, and that she doesn't need the validation of or the attention of her teachers or her peers for her to see how great she is. And as a parent, you're going to say these things to a lesser degree. I've been there where my parents have been like, "Oh, Bianca, you're so amazing," and it's just like eye roll, yeah, right. Okay, mum, you just say that because you're my mum. So trying to be real sincere and real genuine, so heartfelt that she does feel the words when I say it to her, and explaining it in a way that she can see why she doesn't need the validation of her teachers or her peers to feel important. Just also explaining to her just some other things. Her self-worth doesn't come from what her teachers say or don't say to her, because her worth is intrinsic inside of her, and it cannot be diminished or taken away just by someone else's opinion. And then I also said to her, this dynamic that you're feeling, it's something that a lot of people go through, even as adults, making her see that this is a very normal thing, like trying to normalize it to show her that it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to feel that you are overlooked sometimes, and that you can see past that, and maybe you can work on it in a way that's like, hey, yeah, my teachers don't have to say nice things about me in order for me to think nice things about myself. Just little things like that. It's seeing these moments and taking these opportunities to have these kinds of conversations with your children, because we are teaching the generation below us to just be like, well, not below us, but the next generation to grow up feeling empowered and feeling like I have this confidence within me, and it's not because someone told me I was great. It's because I can see it myself, and that I am a great person. I have all these skills that I can contribute, and I can give so much to the world without, regardless of what other people think of me. So if you start to see the worth inside of you, then you start to feel more confident in using your voice, in not being shy or nervous, or feeling like you're in someone's shadow. Like it's not one dimensional. There's lots of different layers going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you were sharing that, I just kept thinking about how there's so much work going on now, this concept that is going out there to people. Hopefully, people are coming across this inner child work and reparenting yourself. So, all of the things that you didn't get as a child, now we as adults are being told you need to go back and fix those unclosed loops from your childhood and reparent
Absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah.
So if you weren't validated as a child, or if you were made to feel small and you weren't given space to express your voice, your opinions, and your needs, then to start off, if I tell someone, okay, you need to speak up for yourself and tell your auntie that she has to text you before she shows up at your doorstep. For some people, that could be really hard. And they could say, well, geez, you don't know my auntie. I can't tell her that. She'll tell me, nephew, don't be silly. When I come over, I'm just going to show up at your door. Thank you very much. And they'll say, well, now what? So the instruction to people is actually, okay, when you have a moment and you're ready to get into this practice, then you might get calm and quiet and picture yourself as a child and the need that was missing, and then say, so for example, if it was myself, I know I used to be called Ruthie as a kid, And so if I'm trying to tap into
That's so
those,
cute, Ruthie.
yeah, I was little Ruthie.
Mhm.
And so to tap into those memories, I would imagine little Ruthie with her pigtails and chubby cheeks. And now when I close my eyes, I'm her and I'm looking into her eyes and I would say, Ruthie, you're safe. I love you. I'm here for you. You matter. You're enough. It's always safe for you to speak up. I'm listening. Talk to me. And someone who's never done inner child work might go, oh my goodness, what on earth? That's just so weird. Or that's really cheesy. I couldn't do that. First thing I would say to that is this is recommended by psychologists and therapists. Second thing is no one has to know that you're doing that. If you're embarrassed, well, it's just between you and your childhood self. But the psychologists that recommend this work, they even add ritualistic aspects to it, like making a shrine or an altar for your childhood self, having a photograph, having little bits and pieces that bring back those memories, and listing up all of those unhealed components from your childhood, whether even if it's like an absent parent. So if you find that you are falling into relationships where the partner is absent, whether it was an absent father or an absent mother, then if you go into inner child work, you would have this practice, whether it's once a week, 3 times a week, and you go back to that child version of you and you would say, little Ruthie, I'm available for you. I'm here for you. I'm always with you. I have time for you. And it doesn't mean that actually there's a little child sitting there and I'm making time for them. No, it's fixing an internal imbalance that has been stuck in a loop in your subconscious since you were a child. And these reprogrammings may have to be practiced again and again over a period of time until you feel the shift. And you'll know that you've had the shift when your outer world starts to reflect the inner change. But I couldn't help but think of inner child work because you are preempting Penny's need to do inner child work when she becomes her adult self. So all of this is so important.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that this inner child work. And I know that it's something that you've walked us through a guided meditation on this in one of our moon ceremonies way back. I think it was last year. It may have been one of the first guided meditations that you did, where I remember specifically it was, do you remember this one where you did the inner child, this inner child guided
I
meditation?
remember that. Yeah. And we
And I
had the children and the preteen and the teenager and
Yes,
the young
yes,
you. Yes.
exactly. It's very powerful when you are going through a guided meditation like this, because when you're in an environment, in a setting where you are being guided to meet yourself as a toddler, as a preschooler, as a primary aged child, as a preteen, as a teenager, and you're imagining yourself and you're saying the things that you wish you had have heard when you were that age. It's so powerful and it can give you that shift. I would say it's almost kind of like you're grounding yourself in the knowing that you're giving yourself, your younger self, what it needs, and your outer world will eventually start shifting and reflecting that inner change that you've been doing. So there's a lot of energy work kind of involved in this. And I know we've talked about energy in our previous episodes, so it seems quite fitting that that this is tied into one of, I would say, or maybe a solution or something moving forward for those who are thinking, yeah, I'm a people pleaser. Yeah, I'm afraid to make someone upset or mad, you know. And then it's like, yes, I am this. Now what? You know, and well, this is one way you can proceed. One very gentle and harmless way. I mean, what is there to lose by doing some kind of inner child work? It's very harmless and but very beneficial. Yeah.
That's right. That is so true. Because look, if we look out there at the advice for people on people pleasing, there are a lot of standard techniques and things you can say. You can pick up a book from Whitcoulls, from your local bookstore, and you'll find a lot of advice on how to set boundaries, how to say no. I've even seen on Instagram once there was this post that I had screenshot a long time ago, and I kept it on my phone for about a year. And then when I look back, I said, oh, I don't need that anymore. And I deleted it. But it was examples of how to say no. And people sometimes have to start so small with these basic concepts and trainings of little techniques to help them start realizing where's the line where I can set the boundary. So in this screenshot that I had taken, it said, you could say to your friend, oh, that's so lovely. Thank you for inviting me to that barbecue. But I think I'll have to take a rain check. And that was the end of the example. So in this example of declining to go to something that you don't want to go to, there's no explanation. There's no, oh, because I need to go to a horse riding lesson, or, you know, you don't have to make up an excuse. You just express what is right for you. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I wouldn't be able to make it this time, but let me know next time and I'll see what I can do. So we can sometimes, you know, when you first learn to express a boundary, you can be very apologetic because you don't realize that there's a line and there's a you on the other side of it, and you can make those bold decisions. But when we talk about shifting the energy, these practices can actually completely remove the need to learn these kinds of techniques, because your shift is happening on the subtle and subconscious level. You will naturally say, oh, Becky, thank you so much. I wish I could make it, but in this case, I've got to stay home. I've got some other priorities, and be okay. Or Sarah, I know normally I'm your go-to when you've got trouble on, but I can't meet you for coffee this weekend. I'm at my capacity at the moment. So, you know, letting people know when you can't or you're not able to be there physically, or to absorb emotional baggage, or to allow them to drop in or have your money, your time, your services, whatever it is, wherever you have to draw the boundary, including telling your husband you couldn't cook dinner for him tonight because you just can't today. All of those things are fine. And if we just tell people, oh yeah, you should speak up and here's how you should say it, without changing on the energetic level, it's always going to be a struggle. And that's why all these techniques, they can help get you by, but until you change the underlying aspects that are coming from self-esteem and having power and courage in your energy behind your voice, the issue will be ongoing and you'll be desperately clutching these techniques, maybe making them a habit, but always feeling rotten every time you use the habit.
Thank you so much for that, Ruth. I totally agree with what you've said, and I think that there's just so many tools out there for people who are wanting to overcome these their people pleasing tendencies. And I think that there's not going to be one way that's the golden, tried and true way, because we all are so unique in our experience that has led us to these tendencies are uh, so unique and personal to us. So we can really only suggest helpful tools, and whichever one resonates with you, it would be through trial and error, just trying something out and seeing how it works, purchasing that book and having a read of it and seeing if some of those what some of their suggestions work. Like, I know you mentioned something about setting boundaries. Well, you may not have said it exactly that way, but I understood it as being able to set boundaries. And I feel like there's a book out there that's specifically about setting boundaries. So there's so much out there, and we couldn't even begin to go into all the tools that are available to someone. Um, but yeah, there's a lot, and but I feel like not only that is there a lot, but it takes a long time too. It's not going to be solved with one guided meditation. It's not going to be solved by reading one book and now being an expert on setting boundaries. It is that energetic shift that's going to take uh it may even take you you may start to see that the social network groups that you have aligned yourself with in the past may start to fall away the more you start using your voice and the more you start exerting your boundaries and saying, no, actually, you know what, I don't feel like going out tonight. I think I'm just going to have a quiet one, just stay inside and I don't know, and watch something on TV. Or and then the people who are right for you or who are aligned with you will stay, and the people who are not aligned with you and your growth will fall away. And that's just the natural thing of life. People come and go. They take up chapters in your life. Some people are meant to take up more chapters. Some people were only meant to take up one chapter. And it's about recognizing that when you change, the people that you align yourself with may also start to change too. So that's just another thing to be aware of when you start doing the work and realizing and feeling that shift within you. You will start to see your outer world, aka your networks, your friends, your alliances. They may even start to change as well. And people will come into your life that will be more that will actually help facilitate this new change that you're going through. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but yeah.
No, that does make a lot of sense. One, I think there's a book that I I want to recommend it, but I haven't read it from cover to cover. I have sped read it. And from speed reading it, I really liked it. And I think it's safe enough to recommend to people. It's called The Book of Boundaries by Melissa Urban. And the only reason I didn't buy it was because I just have too many books on the go at the moment. But I took a photo of it and I remembered saying, oh, I'll come back for you. This is a good book. But I kind of read most of it through speed reading it. And it gives very specific examples of how to hold the line, whether it's the neighbor that wants to take your power tools. I'm paraphrasing. This is not an exact example from the book, but just general examples. Someone wants to take your things, take your time, take your body, take your emotions, encroach on your privacy, or share all these opinions and thoughts that you didn't ask for, whatever it is, all of these things are not okay. And when you allow people to walk all over your personal lines that you need protected to feel safe, then you you'll fall into very unhealthy relationship patterns and unhealthy relationships that can be toxic for life, and you can feel trapped in them. And people can be afraid that if they start expressing boundaries when they have situations that they're reliant on, maybe they're reliant financially, it can be quite scary. And so I'm saying all of this cautiously because I'm not trying to rock the boat or upset the apple cart. But at the same time, yes, I am, because you do need to go through that process of learning that you will be safe on the other side. And the thing that you fear, majority of it is in your imagination, and you will find that people will respect you as your true self. And I know we're coming up to time, but I wanted to share one short example of someone who was really owning it and not afraid to be themselves. This is a funny story someone told me a while back. They had a Jewish friend who followed all of the kosher rules. And once a year, they ate bacon. And everyone around them who was not Jewish sort of judged them and said, "Hey, well, why are you breaking your own rules? Isn't that, something you need to adhere to?" And you adhere to it all the rest of the year. And this person said, "Well, this is my decision, and I friggin' love bacon once a year, and this is what I'm going to do." And everyone around them just went, "Oh, okay. Well, you made your stand and you expressed who you are, and now we can't judge you anymore because we've seen the true you and you're okay with it. I reckon you're a good fella. I'm okay with it too." And then everyone moved on, and no one was cross or upset or judging. Everyone let them be who they were.
I love
So
that.
yeah, it's just, you imagine all these people are going to
Yeah.
judge you or treat you in a
Mhm.
certain way, but once you cross that threshold and be yourself, no one actually cares.
Exactly. I feel I know that I've been there before where, it's like, maybe more so my early 20s, I was in university and it's a real social time for you when you're at that age and you're coming across meeting lots of different people. And I'd made a new friend and we really got along quite well, and I was really nervous to tell her that the type of music that I was into. And it wasn't anything bad. It was just, maybe not the usual type of music that yeah, that one would that we would have expected, or at least in my mind that she would have expected. And so I said, "Oh, I really like these artists." And then she was like, "Oh, really? Well, that's great. Yeah, me too." And I was just like, "What?" And so there's that thing of thinking, will she like me if she finds out that the type of music that I like listening to, she might not like me. And then it's like I tell her, and turns out she likes it too. And it's that whole, like, you just feel so liberated because you're like, wow, the situation in my mind really was not a real thing. It was just a made up thing in my mind. So we can be our own worst enemies in that sense. That yeah, we're thinking the scenario is going to be this one thing, but actually what plays out is not really what we're thinking in our minds.
That's so true. So I guess the kind of the crux of all of this is about speaking up and comforting yourself and telling yourself it's safe to be you and it's safe to have your full expression. And I keep thinking, some people in relationships, whether it's a sibling or a parent or in an intimate relationship or scenario, when someone is kind of cornering you or making you feel pressured into doing something that you don't want to do, just to riff off of what we're talking about, a lot of the time it may not be that they're trying to make you do it, but that you're being towards them in a way that is letting them make you do certain things. And if you would just be a little bit bolder in your energy and say, hey, I felt encroached upon when you did this, or I felt hurt when you said that, or I felt it was overbearing when you shared that opinion about my going to the gym, or whatever is the thing that pushed you in a way where you need to express your boundary or your needs. Just telling people how you feel, what you need, what you think. I need this. I need space. And if someone goes, oh no, the the relationship is in danger, they said they need space, well, elaborate. Oh, it's not, I'm not saying that I don't like you or I don't like seeing you or being around you, but my me time is important, and it's important for me so I can be my best self even when I'm with you. And I don't want you to see this as me being selfish, but this is how I can look after my well being so we can continue to have good times together. And this is what I need. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just letting you know. I'm being okay with that. People might feel hurt at first, but once they get used to you being firm in expressing your feelings and your needs, they will actually be trained to treat you in a different way. And as we've been talking about, if they're meant to be in your life, they'll respect it, and they will actually hold that boundary with you because you've shown them where it is.
Thank you so much for that, Ruth. I totally 100% agree. I couldn't agree with you more on these things. The ones that, especially the things that you've highlighted, is that, like, and I mentioned as well a little bit earlier, was that, the people who respect our boundaries and uphold our boundaries are going to be the ones that are going to be the most aligned with us and will help facilitate that growth, because the only constant in life is change. We are constantly evolving as human beings, and we hope that the people that we surround ourselves with are helping us in that growth, as opposed to deterring us or pulling us away from that growth. So but I just thought, we are coming to time, and I thought maybe we could wrap it up. And just to briefly summarize, I think there have been uh, some real great things that we've talked about, that we've touched on. So we've discussed what people pleasing looks like, um, where it comes from, and more importantly, the different ways to overcome these tendencies. We talked about inner child work, which is one of my favorites. I really enjoyed those guided meditations. The ones that you've done, Ruth, in our moon ceremonies have been amazing, and it's a good way of giving yourself that which you didn't get as a child. And also we talked about, there's lots of books and lots of online resources available to provide tools on how to overcome these tendencies and learn to set boundaries. And you recommended that book, The Book of Boundaries by Melissa Urban. And I did a wee search, and it says that some of the things that you might expect from this book is it'll teach you um, um, it'll teach you how to navigate relationships and enhance personal well-being by offering strategies for establishing healthy boundaries in the different areas of your life. Because we can be our own worst enemy, and sometimes the situation is not what we think it is. So speak up, find your voice, and you may just find that people are more aligned with you than you think. So um, that is all for our episode today, and just we would love to see you in the next 2 weeks for another episode on the Lighthaven podcast. And remember, the path to your best reality is in your hands to create when you become conscious.